Hello there, this is Denzin, and today I'm looking at this, Bloodbowl, which has had many different versions over the years. Here's the original. Look at the state of this box. Now, I did have a copy of this back in the day. I do remember buying this from Games Workshop. I already had the second edition, which obviously came a couple of years later after this version. So how did I manage to buy this from a Games Workshop store? Well, bizarrely, they actually had a sale on. I know, do you remember those? A sale in a Games Workshop store, and they were sort of getting rid of a load of old stuff they probably had in stock, and this was on the pile. I remember picking up Blood Bowl for about a fiver. This was very early 90s. I remember later on getting Adeptus Titanicus and the original Space Marine game for a tenner each. Jeez. Yeah, they did actually have a sale on, and they had a bit of a clearance, and I remember picking up this for a fiver. This isn't that one, though. I got this not long ago as a replacement. Blood Bowl is a favourite of mine. I never played this version. I never have. It's just sitting there in this tatty old box. This is one of the early little games that they did. Let's have a look on the back, what we got there. So we're in the 1980s, of course. So there we go. 86. Obviously Jervis Johnson. And cover art by Brett Owens, who also did the Chainsaw Warrior, which I also had a look at. And then we get a bit of blurb, which has never changed for Blood Bowl. I mean, it's pretty easy, isn't it? It's a fancy football game. Lots of weird teams clashing on an American-style football pitch. What is strange about this is, unlike future versions of the game, in this we get whole teams of not only humans and orcs, but also zombies. We've got ogres, dark elves, an undead mummy. I mean, it has some trogs as well, troglodyte type creatures in here. And the reason why they can do all these is because they're all cardboard stand-ups. They're not actual physical minis. So let's have a little opening of the box. In we go. There's the rules. Now the rules are slightly different in the original one, and you get the sense that Jervis Johnson wasn't entirely happy with it. There's a whole thing at the back where he talks about the actual game itself and how he did an American football, basically a simulator of American football, and it was very long and probably rather dull. But then he sort of added some Warhammer Fantasy Battle style tweaks to it and made it a bit quicker, a bit faster paced. Saying that, there are still some very different themes in this, rules-wise, compared to later on versions. You can create your team. Star players, you spend points and then you roll on tables to see what special abilities they have. So instead of getting a star player card of their stats on that you get in later versions, in this it's quite random. Just see what you get. Magic armor they might have, gauntlets of catching to help them catch the ball, make them a bit more skillful, little extra abilities, that sort of thing. I quite like that. That's the random factor. I also like the fact that the did you knows were in the original version as well. Those little facts. Because apart from the one page of blurb at the beginning, there's no other information about Blood Bowl. There's no backstory, So the little did you knows are quite interesting and humorous. And some of them have very familiar characters, even in this early version. Like the two commentators, what they're called, Jim and Bob, is it? Who appear in the video games, in every version of Blood Bowl, doing a little commentary. And in this, they do the basically the examples of play. You have a little Jim and Bob telling you what works, what doesn't. Throwing and kicking, which is strange because later versions just had throwing, didn't they? The kicking became an optional rule. There's a did you know here about a gnome team, which I think funny because they've just not long ago released a gnome team for the more up-to-date version of the game. So gnomes are back in it, but in the original version they are mentioned. There they are. And we don't really have blocking, so usually you block someone next to you, which basically is a rule for smacking someone around the head, isn't it? But in here we have tackling and dodging, and scoring touchdowns. You can only score up to 3 touchdowns in this version of the game, so whoever gets to 3 first can win the game, basically. and attack. So instead of blocks, you've got attacks and you've got tackles. So a tackle is basically trying to get the ball off somebody. Attack rather than block or blitz move, basically, that we'd have in later versions of the game. I love this image here. The mummy getting smacked and he's just unraveling as his head flies off. That's great. Nice bit of humour there. And then we've got the teams. So we've got dwarfs, humans, elves, halflings, dark elves, half orcs. Don't get them anymore, do you? Hobgoblins, orcs, the Chaos All-Stars. Classic. And then we've got, troglodytes. What happened to them? Maybe if gnomes have come back, maybe the trogs will. Lesser goblins. Oh, that's bad, isn't it? I mean, being a goblin's bad enough, but a lesser goblin? I guess snotlings in more recent years. And then we've got undead here, look. So we've got skeletons, mummies. Each one has a little special rule to go with them to make them a little bit different. And that's it. And there's a tiny little campaign rules there. That's it. It's gaining experience points and spending them. And then quite a chunk on designer's notes. And then, and then you got this referee signals. Some of them are actually slightly rude. Wouldn't get that in a GW game now, would you? Yeah. You get the impression, though, from this is that Jervis Johnson didn't seem entirely happy with what he'd done. And you can kind of tell that because there's a sheet straight away with questions and answers and rules clarifications and optional rules, which it's only 2 years until the next version of this game, when it obviously got a bigger box and minis inside, which is my first introduction to the game, really. So I get the impression, because there's a little, if you have any questions about this game, why not write me a letter? And there's the address there and everything. Write me a letter to the game studio in Nottingham on low pavement. I think you'll probably end up in some little shop now, probably there, rather than Games Workshop, but never mind. But yes, write them a physical letter and they will get back to you with a yes-no answer. So yeah, you get the impression that Blood Bowl was already adapting. And instead of the minis, of course, we've got little cardboard stand-ups. So if I just pop this open. Cardboard stand-ups. I mean, I don't know what you think about them. Obviously, minis, I think, are lovely. But the little drawings on these are funny. So you've got whole teams in here. Orcs, dwarves. I mean, it's a great way of getting straight into the game, isn't it, really? Let's face it. No minis to paint, just get these out. And then if you want to have front and back, and if you want to add minis, do so later. You know, so it's a great way of getting straight into the game. And they all stand up on these. There we go. That's a photocopy of the team roster pad, because obviously that was used up a long time ago. So you get all your team statistics on there, and any notes on the injuries. And then the board. I have to say this board is very dull. Compared to more modern versions, of course, or the so-called astrogranic polystyrene pitch that we got in the next version, this is very dull because it's just green, isn't it? It's just green. There's no little severed arms or legs scattered about on there, you know. But it is very typical of the boards of the time in the way it slots together as a jigsaw. Am I doing it right? I'm not, am I? So go around here. Yeah, there we go. So very simple. I don't think the amount of squares has changed. You've still got a skull in the middle, although a little bit smaller on this version. There we go. And now we've got quite a bit of stuff on the edges, but here, as you can see, 1, 2, 3 touchdowns. That's it. Get to the end zone. It does look a bit elongated compared to more modern versions. So maybe I should count the squares. Has it changed? I'm sure there's some aficionados out there who know a lot better than me, actually. Yeah, very long pitch. Very long pitch. Doesn't look quite as wide to my eye, but maybe I'm imagining that. I don't know. But yeah, Blood Bowl. As I say, I've never played this version. Maybe I should. Maybe I should give it a go. Blood Bowl was probably the second edition, which I'll probably get into. Actually, I've got it, so I'll get that out. Was my first love, really, when it came to actual miniature games. And I can't really get around the more recent version of it, to be honest with you. I haven't played it for a while. But I am quite good at Blood Bowl, I have to admit. It's one of my games that I have a bit of skill with. Yeah. And Jervis Johnson, I've seen him quite a lot around my area because he lives near me. I've bumped into him a couple of times in coffee shops, and I've never gone up to him and said anything to him like some weird fanboy. I've just ignored him. And I remember shadowing him into town once, just walking slightly in front of him all the way for about half an hour. And I thought, oh, why don't I just turn around and go, I love your games? But I didn't, because I didn't want to come across as a sad sack. Opportunities lost, but I could always write him a letter. So that's the end of Blood Bowl, first edition. Classic, but you can see it definitely needed a reboot almost immediately after it came out. So that's the end of this one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again.